Hi, I'm Sam Hawley, coming to you from the lands of the Gadigal people. This is ABC News Daily. China's rapid expansion of its military and recent exercises in the Taiwan Strait have heightened concern that Beijing might be preparing to invade Taiwan. The Chinese ambassador to Australia has added to that by saying all means necessary will be used to reunify the island with the mainland if the Taiwanese resist. Today, host of 7:30, Sarah Ferguson, on her exclusive interview with the ambassador.
The ambassador joins me now. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Thank you for your invitation.
You're welcome.
Sarah, it's not common that ambassadors give interviews, especially China's. And I really want to unpack your discussion with the ambassador, Xiao Qian, in a moment. But it came about after an address he'd given to the National Press Club. So let's just have a look at that first.
Xiao Qian, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China.
Well, that was, as you say, that was remarkable in its own way because, of course, he's fronting up to questions where there is no, I don't think there's any pre-discussion of any kind about who's going to ask what. So it's a very open forum. He can try and guide the debate as best he can with his own speech, but then it's to the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have many questions from the media, and thank you again for your first
As is very common at the press club, the grit was in the questions, and he was asked about Taiwan. The thing that people don't tend to do at the press club, because so many people are queuing up to ask their questions, is to get a lot of follow-ups. So there was a very good question asked by Stephen Jejic from the ABC about what the Chinese meant by all necessary means to retake Taiwan or to bring Taiwan back to the motherland, and that was one of the central questions that I wanted to pursue.
What constitutes precisely, in the minds of the Chinese government, a compelling circumstance that would justify a use of force across the strait?
We're waiting for a peaceful unification, but we can never rule out our option to use other means. So when necessary, when compelled, we are ready to use all necessary means. As to what does it mean by all necessary means, you can use your imagination.
Welcome to the programme. It's only 8 years
Okay, so let's start where you started in the interview with the ambassador, and that went to that issue of China and Taiwan and the potential of an invasion.
Yes. From the press club where you said that China was prepared to use all necessary means. That sounds like, as I said, I thought that question at the press club was interesting. It didn't have a follow-up. Now, we know that Xi Jinping has said that Taiwan must come back to the motherland, and we know that they've put a timetable on that. But what we haven't been able to do is to talk to Chinese officials about how they see how that could unfold and what's in their mind about the potential for that to be a military invasion or blockade of some kind, which is why I chose to start there.
All necessary means mean potentially a full-scale military invasion of Taiwan.
Well, sorry, actually, if you look at the anti-secession law, which was adopted in 2005 by the National People's Congress, Article 8 has a very clear articulation about
and you really pushed him, didn't you, on that?
Yes, and of course, now he's an accomplished diplomat, and he was still the master of that question, and he wasn't going to. He wanted to back away from talking about it as an invasion, but I wanted to keep going.
A full-scale military invasion of Taiwan is possible.
Well, Sarah, I would not use the word invasion. Taiwan is part of China. And the invasion is for, the relations.
It's an interesting phrase. That phrase, all necessary means, is, I think it originated with Sartre's play, Dirty Hands, and then it's been used at different times by people seeking to overthrow with violence existing orders. So it's in the Chinese lingo, if you like, around important government movements. So I wanted to know what that looked like from his point of view. And of course, that then takes you into what would actually happen in Taiwan were that to happen. Now, I'm not saying he gave away any state secrets, but it was a fantastic opportunity to be able to ask him about it.
You will decide to invade or to take Taiwan back by force of your own volition, not in response to something that the people of Taiwan may do.
Well, Sarah, the policy of the Chinese government is for peaceful unification. We've been talking
and the ambassador, he spoke about, this peaceful reunification, but you pushed him, it was really interesting, on the fact that the majority of the Taiwanese people don't want this.
So this is interesting because of his get out of jail free card on that is just to condemn polling, because the most reliable take we have on what the Taiwanese people want is or think about the notion of reunification is this poll that's done taken twice a year and has been going since I think 1993 or 1994. So it is a lot of data, and that shows that the biggest support in Taiwan is actually for the status quo, for nothing to change.
The majority of Taiwanese support the status quo.
So opinion poll sometimes doesn't tell the facts.
An opinion poll that goes between 1993 and the present day that constantly produces the same result is likely to be.
But it's a very complicated moment because the Taiwanese government has, I think, no contact with Beijing. So we have a situation of extreme peril for the world, for the Taiwanese people, the Taiwanese government, and for the Chinese. But there's actually, at this moment, no communication between Taiwan and Beijing, that's incredibly dangerous in its own right. And so we can only go on what we're seeing in those public expressions of point of view.
And one of the concerning things, the rhetoric coming from the Chinese is about re-educating the Taiwanese people, and you pushed him on that. That reunification would mean that the Taiwanese would have to think in a different way.
Needing a process to have a correct understanding of China, and I quote you there. How would you go about correcting the thoughts of millions of people who've grown up used to free thinking?
Well, there are 1.4 billion people in China, and the 23 million people in Taiwan are part of the Chinese population. And as a citizen of this country, each and everyone is obliged to learn about the basic knowledge.
And of course, these are very simple questions, Sam, because they really they go to the heart of the idea that we have. Our societies are structured completely differently, which is why I wanted to ask him a very simple question, which is why do you think it's a good idea, or words to that effect, that people all think in the same way?
Why do you think it's so important that everyone thinks the same way?
Well, in China, people are supposed to learn the Chinese language, otherwise you cannot communicate.
And some members of the Chinese Foreign Ministry have been very outspoken about using this word re-education, which of course has terrible connotations from Chinese post-war history under Mao. So it's not a phrase without freight.
About forcing someone to receive education. So I would not use the word re-education. It carries a very complicated.
Now he pushes back on re-education. He says it's mostly a matter of language and learning about China.
Well, like people in this country, they have to learn English language, learn the history about Australia. That's their obligation.
But it's very timely, the concept, because of this UN report out of Xinjiang.
The report says China has committed serious human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province, where there's a program of mass incarceration. The UN says China's crimes may amount to crimes against humanity.
Yes, and it's very difficult to interview someone when faced with a report as detailed as that one, which talked about crimes against humanity, torture, coercive birth control, interrogation techniques using a tiger chair, documents that civil society and journalists have extracted from the Chinese system that appear to be authentic, about the nature of the system that was set up to re-educate Uyghurs in Xinjiang and other members of the ethnic minorities in that area. And to sit in front of someone, and he says the report is a complete fabrication. It's not very often in interviews that you are talking about something where someone is saying something that is completely ridiculous.
You any feelings of shame or revulsion?
No, not at all. Because that's absolutely fabrication. That's absolutely fabrication.
There are some things that you could talk about around the methodology, but you really can't take issue with the findings. And so it's very difficult at that point to launch a debate on that topic because suddenly you're into a great deal of granular detail. So I had to find a mechanism for talking about it. And it happened that morning Penny Wong had said that she found the report quite harrowing, which meant that I didn't have to prosecute the case, but could actually put to him what Penny Wong had said about it. And the fact that she was looking for some concerted action around the world, which sort of puts us back into the coronavirus space when Australia called for the coronavirus investigations.
What we need to do is work with international partners, other members of the international community about how it is we respond to this report.
So will you punish Australia if they find concerted action to respond to that report? You've done it before when we've
As Ambassador, I'm not going to suggest to punish Australia for making their statements. Australia is entitled to their own views. But I'm going to suggest that Australia should check against the facts before make serious statements.
It's no secret, is it, that Australia's relationship with China, it's really taken a hit in the last little while. You mentioned the call for the inquiry into the origins of COVID. And given we've seen that, the military exercises near Taiwan, we've seen a push by China into the Pacific. Now we've got this damning UN report. Do you think this is really a moment or the moment that this relationship between Australia and China can get back on track?
It's a good question because that it's where I ended the interview, because there have been discussions about a meeting between Albanese and President Xi Jinping. The one thing that we know, and we know it from the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we know it from every tense moment in political affairs since then, well, before and since, is that death of communication is the most dangerous thing of all. If there is no one to pick up the phone between the Russians and the Americans during the Cuban Missile Crisis, who knows how that could have ended. So in spite of all of these complications, talking is good. Talking is almost always good.
Sarah Ferguson hosts 7:30 on ABC TV. China has a deadline to unite Taiwan with the mainland by 2049. This episode was produced and mixed by Flint Duxfield, Sydney Peed, Sam Dunn and Chris Dengate, who also did the mix. Our supervising producer is Stephen Smiley. I'm Sam Hawley. Over the weekend, catch This Week with David Lipson, where he'll be looking at the childcare strikes and the passage through the Parliament of the government's climate bill. ABC News Daily will be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to listen to more free podcasts or download the ABC Listen app and stream ad-free.